To me, the best thing we can do is to try to find a balance. I think the golden rule is a good guide. Love one another as thyself. So try to think when you're in a situation, what's good for me, what's good for them, and what's good for the situation. And let me give an example. Like right before I came here to do this interview with you, my husband was looking around for something and he wanted my help to find it. Well, I weighed that against the fact that I was supposed to be on the air with you and he could probably find his shoes by himself. So I was looking at him, at me, and at the context. And I said, you're going to need to find those shoes because I cannot assist with this, So trying to think, it's like in that moment, how do I balance this person, me, and the context? And then it's healthy. If what you do is you only think of others in the context, over time you get depressed. You're so passive, you keep everything inside and you don't get things done. On the other hand, if you only think of you and the context, you could be a narcissistic personality. You could just be the kind that other people don't matter, whatever. That's too aggressive. There's a happy medium. And the golden rule's right. It's to say, let me consider me, let me consider you, and let me consider the situation. And most people tend to go too far one way or the other.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you don't want to be the martyr on one end where you're never or the
and that kind of person often gets hooked up with the one who doesn't consider other people. So there you go. And then they keep each other stuck because the one who doesn't consider other people doesn't learn compassion, doesn't get called out. And this one gets more and more depressed. And then they blame the other one. If you weren't like this, and here we go. Or this is the person who's got a partner who has a substance abuse problem, who just covers up for them, whatever, and gets more and more depressed, but says this person's the one with the problem. The best thing is to say, let's look at everybody. Let's look at it, like a triangle, self, other, and context.
You brought up the point that people who are always thinking about others, and they're putting other people first, they're kind of putting themselves subservient, always like that, the kind of the doormat type of situation. Yes, they end up getting hooked up with somebody that's more the other way. Now, just because you are hooked up with someone who is more the other way might not mean they're necessarily a full-blown narcissist. But to me, there seems to be a point where the person who is very empathetic and always looking out for other people needs to grow a spine. And that this other person may be in their life to help them learn how to come back more to the center rather than blaming them as, oh, they're the narcissist. How can I be more proactive and not have a spine?
Exactly. Marnie, we train people how to treat us. Mm-hmm. And I often tell people strong is not mean because we think that we have to be mean about it. Instead of saying, no, I just won't be able to help you find your shoes right now. I got to go. Yeah. It doesn't have to be mean. It doesn't have to be attacking the other person. I think many times people are thinking either they've got to be too passive or too aggressive. And they're not thinking there's something in the middle where I say my position and I'm strong, but I'm not mean. And I've seen so many times when people do that and they actually start dealing differently with the person, they start to retrain them, how to treat them. They retrain them. It's not okay. It's not okay to treat me this way. And not in a mean way, not with arguing, whatever. It's like, I don't respond to that. If you want to talk to me, you can't use that tone. I just don't do that. I don't do that tone.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I can say, as someone who for years enabled someone else, just basically voting with my silence for behavior that was not acceptable.
We are trained to do that as women. Yes, most of us have to do that.
I mean, I think you're not doing the other person any service by trying to avoid the confrontation or whatever. You're enabling them. You're teaching them unhealthy ways to behave. And then you're going to end up miserable at some point where you're going to say, I can't do this anymore. And it's not, I really don't think it's all their fault. I think it was my fault for not being bold and saying, you know, this is acceptable, this isn't, and sticking with it and having some boundaries.
Yes. Yes. You know, probably the best description I've heard of that is in a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. Did you read that? Okay, well, she talks about fairy tales and the lessons for women in fairy tales. And she talks about Little Red Riding Hood. Now, Little Red Riding Hood was originally called Little Red Cap. And Little Red Cap, her cap was knitted, and it was a symbol of all the wisdom passed from generations of women about what to do and what not to do. So it's about women being too passive, you know, and not really listening to their instincts, because, you know, if you recall, Little Red Cap was on her way to her grandmother's, and a wolf, someone that was going to take advantage of her, hits on her in the woods and says, where are you going? Now, Marnie, she not only tells him, she draws him a map. Okay, and she don't know where it is. Here it is, okay? So then she gives him the map, okay? And then he books it over to grandmother's, okay? And as we know, he takes grandmother out and he gets in her clothes, okay? So she's sitting there on the bed and she's going, well, all her instincts are like, this isn't right, this isn't right. But in the real book, she saves herself. You know, in the fairy tale, the woodcutter saves her. But in the actual fairy tale, she's thinking, you know what? This dude is going to eat me. I'm going to get eaten. And not, it didn't mean literally eaten. It meant herself was going to get eaten up. Who she truly was going to get eaten up. Mm-hmm. So rather than wait for the woodcutter, like in Grimm's fairy tale, she figures, I better do something. See, that's the take action part. So she starts pulling out a string from her cap from all that wisdom. And he goes, what's that? And she goes, it's my head. And he goes, oh, because he's never seen a cat before. And she goes, I got to go to the bathroom. And which of course is the outhouse. And he goes, no. And she goes, no, hold on to my head. You're holding on to me. And so she hands him the string. He takes it. She runs out, puts down the cap, and gets away. Point being, take action. Don't just sit there going, you know, something's wrong. And I don't feel good. If you say you love me, how come you got those big teeth? How come you've got drool going down your and you don't act like you want to help me? See, her focus was totally on him. And she had to get in touch with herself and go, you know, I'm in trouble here. I gotta figure this out. But that's what you're saying you finally did. You finally put on the cap and go, okay, now I'm sure I'm not the first woman in the world who's done this. What do I need to do? So, is that helpful, Marnie?
Yeah, I like that. I've never heard that version of this.
That's the original version. You know,